Just going through the investigation, I realised that I probably should do a little discussion about another question, which is called, the topic being inequations. So this is just supplementary to the first video. So in inequations, you don't have equal signs, and what you have is these sort of symbols. Okay, so the definition of this one is greater than. When you put a line underneath, that means it could be equal to. This symbol here is less than, but when you put a line underneath, you could have equal to as well. So can you copy down those four? They're the only ones you can have. And when you're ready, come across to the next page. So what I've got here is, if I've just got x equals 3, that's one answer only, and this is called an equation. Okay, so if there's one answer, it's an equation. But if I've got an inequality, like x is greater than 3, there's an infinite number of solutions that are possible, and just if you could just think of 1 or 2 or 3, whatever you like, and just write them down, and then when you're ready, come back. Okay, so for instance, if x is greater than 3, well, x could be 3.5, or x could be 4, or x could be 1001.7. Okay, so there's an infinite number of answers, but sometimes you can only have whole numbers. So if you limit it to only whole numbers, then the answers could be 4, 5, 6, all the way up to infinity, but only whole numbers. So just remember that these numbers here are correct, but if you can only have whole numbers, then just stick with 4, 5, 6, and you can't include 3 because there wasn't an equal sign there. Okay, so copy that down when you're ready to come across. Now, applying this to the investigation, we've talked about having equations with x's and y's, and with the investigation there's going to be x's and y's. So for instance, that is an inequation, okay, because there's not an equal sign, and it says that x plus y is greater than 5. And I've got over here, what could be some examples if you can't have negative numbers? So for instance, if x is 0, what's the number that y must be? And the answer must be 5, because 0 plus 5 is at least equal to 5. So could you think of some other examples for x and y that would fit that? And again, there's an infinite number of solutions, but just if you can just play around with some numbers. Okay, so if you're back, for instance, we could have 1, 4, that gives you 5, but 1, 5, 1, 6, 1, 7, all of those numbers, when you add them together, give you a number bigger than 5. So you can see that there'll be an infinite number just for the number 1, and then when you got to 2, there's an infinite number. So in practical terms, this is vague, but in the question that you'll get, you won't have an infinite number of solutions. But that's just an example that just by using the number 1, you've got an infinite number of solutions. And like for instance, just to prove it, like y could be 0 and x could be 5, and that would still give you a value bigger than 5. Okay, so copy that and come across. What's probably more interesting is when you're limited to a number because it's a less than sign. So for instance, if you can't have negative numbers, if x was 1, what's the biggest y could be? And the answer is it can only be 2. If you put 3, 1 plus 3 is 4, but 4 is equal to 4, not less than 4, so the lowest number would be 2. So if x is 1, y is 2. Another possibility could be 1, 1, because 1 plus 1 is less than 2. 1 plus 0 is less than 4. Okay, so there's an example where just by having x equals 1, you don't have an infinite number of solutions, you only get 3 solutions. And then you could progress on. So for instance, think of some numbers that go with 2, and then when you're ready, come back live. Okay, so if you've just got the number 2, you could have 2, 1, but one more solution could be 2, 0. Okay, and then you've done with the 2's. And then the 3 would be, you can't have 3, 1, so there's only 3, 0. Okay, so instead of having an infinite number of solutions, particularly when you have less than, you actually get a smaller number of answers. Okay, so that's the instruction on how to use inequations. Hope that helps in your task. Copy your notes down and see you later.